Right, welcome back. So, I've done a video on the lurcher, the dangers of lurcher work, probably a month or two back, and there was a question on my comments, and I can't remember who put it now, so apologies. But the guy wanted to know, what do I feed my dog? So I'm going to show you. So I feed my dog raw meat. So this is venison. He's been on a raw diet since he was a pup. I really I'm a fan of feeding raw. The reason why is because for me, I think, the raw diet for a dog is the right diet, because that's what they're meant to eat. They're meant to eat stuff like this, meat on the bone, raw meat. That's what they're designed to eat. Now, I'm not going to get into all like the pros and cons, because you're going to read stuff online that says raw meat is bad for dogs because, it's unsanitary, they can get salmonella, blah, 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 blah. I've never, ever had an issue with feeding raw meat to my dog. My dog he's nearly 5 years old now, and he has been on raw meat since I got him. I got him at 13 weeks. I put him straight on the raw diet. So I've been feeding raw to my dogs for probably 10, 12 years. And the reason I changed is I had a dog, and at the time I was feeding them on a complete biscuit, and she was not holding weight well. So I decided to change it up. I decided to change to raw, and on raw she completely changed, and she was really consistent with her weight and her muscle tone. Don't get me wrong, a raw diet isn't going to make your dog super muscular. You still need to do the work and put the work into that, and if you're working a lurcher. But the benefits I found is they got a bit better coat, they've got more energy, and they crap less. And if you feed your dog on biscuits, now I'm not knocking anyone who wants to feed their dog biscuits, but if you feed your dog biscuits, you're going to notice they're going to crap way more. And the reason for that is because a biscuit diet is bulked with stuff like wheat. Dogs can't digest wheat. They're not designed to digest wheat. You've got to think, when would a dog in the wild eat wheat? It wouldn't. So this is what they're meant to eat, raw meat on the bone. So I feed a mixture of venison, rabbit, pheasant, partridge, duck, whatever I can get during the season, my dog eats it. Now, out of season, maybe when I'm not getting so much game during the summer, I feed, the bulk of what I feed would be chicken, beef mince, lamb mince. You can go to butchers and buy scraps. You can go to the supermarket and, I buy some of my meat from the supermarket for the dog anyway. But what you've got to get right when you feed raw, and loads of people lose their shit over feeding raw because they don't get it. It's really simple. So you have to feed your dog between 2 to 3% of his body weight, and that's general rule of thumb. You'll know, if you're getting it right by how your dog is. If it's too much, lessen it. If it's too little, add some. It's really easy. But you have to get it right with the ratio. So it's got to be something like 80% meat and bone, and then like 5% offal. So the way I do it, the majority of this time of year, my dog will eat a lot of rabbit, and he gets whole rabbit. So I'll feed him the whole rabbit carcass and leave all the heart, liver, lungs, kidneys. That's his 5% offal right there. If not, and you're buying in offal, just feed a little at a time. It's not like you don't have to weigh everything out. It's not an exact science. 80%, meat and bone. So if I was feeding that, you chuck a little bit of heart or a little bit of liver in with that. Doesn't have to be a lot. But you have to make it a... you don't want to just make it the same old boring stuff. You got to mix it up. Like I feed him fish. Whole fish, like you can feed fish in a tin. I do that sometimes, sardines in oil or tomato juice, whatever. But a lot of the time I'll buy whole fish, like trout, mackerel, stuff like that. He gets the whole lot. The only thing I'll do is obviously take the guts out, as I do with any animals, the intestines and stuff. Take that out, and he'll get the whole lot, the head, everything, and he'll eat that. But that oily fish is really good for him. You do want to chuck some vegetables in as well, like some raw veg, like carrots, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, stuff like that. Chuck that in. You can also feed a bit of fruit, blueberries, just stuff like that. Look at, you can find all this information online. But for me, the reason I feed my dog raw is because the results speak for itself. I just think he's in better condition. Now, the type of dog that I keep, he's got quite a bit of Saluki in him. And Salukis really, really are notorious for being very slight dogs. They don't put on a lot of weight. If I fed him biscuit, I think his weight would be so up and down on that. But when you feed him raw, it's very consistent. He's a light dog anyway. But it's, especially when I run him, when he's not working, you'll see a little bit more weight gain. When he's working and running him, he sheds weight like anything because he's at his running weight. So you have to pile on that food. You have to feed him more. And even then, when he's working, he still won't put the pounds on because he's just running that straight off. But for consistency, I will feed raw. I'll always be an advocate of raw feeding. A lot of people are put off by raw because they say it's messy and it takes up a lot of freezer space. It does, I'll agree with that. It's, if you see, I've got like 3 bags full of venison offcuts. A friend of mine called me the other day. He had 2 deer that were shot and he was processing them, and he gave me a call and said, do I want some, scraps for the dog? If you're a raw feeder, if you're buying it, it can be quite expensive. No brainer. So I went over there. I got 3 big bagfuls of like stuff like this, like rib off cuts, and you got to, that's very thick with meat. And so it is time consuming. Like I don't do what some people do. I haven't got an industrial mincer where I mince it all up. I'll literally, like with this, I'll probably just chop it up into 2 or 3 pieces and then portion that up. So I'll go through all the 3 bags, I'll portion it all up, chop it up smaller, freeze it. But I don't mind putting that work in for the results that I get. I get a better dog health wise, a better looking dog. It can be expensive if you buy it, but if you work your dog, then the reason why I like raw is because during the season when I'm out 2 or 3 days a week, he pretty much feeds himself. A night's lamping, if we get into double figure rabbits, week to week, he can feed himself on the rabbits. He has I feed him like a rabbit a day. The only thing you do have to be careful of when you're feeding raw, especially if you're feeding stuff like rabbits, any raw food, is just make sure you worm your dog regularly. I've heard lots of people online saying, if you feed your dog a rabbit ear or something with fur on it, it'll naturally worm it. Don't bet on that. Just don't bet on it. It's rubbish. Just buy a worming tablet, worm your dog every 3 months or once a month, or whatever your worming regime is. Just worm your dog properly. Don't stake your life on that rabbit ear is going to completely worm your dog. It won't. Right? That's why wild animals still have worms and they eat rabbits and all sorts in the fur. It's rubbish. What I do is when I get rabbit or whole prey, I'll always skin it, because the amount of times you'll skin it and you'll see cyst and it's got tapeworm eggs in it. It's just not worth the risk of feeding that rabbit in the jacket and hoping that the fur will deworm the dog. It's just rubbish. Just pay the couple of quid for a worming tablet. So yeah, it does take a little bit of work. Like I'll be stood here for the next hour or so processing this, just chopping it down into smaller pieces and portioning it up. But really, it's I think it's the best way of feeding them anyway. So I'll feed raw eggs as well. Raw eggs. I like putting coconut oil on there. You can buy like a jar of coconut oil, and coconut oil is like hard when you get it, but you can melt it down if you want, or you can I just put a spoonful on his food every day, which is really good. It's got loads of fatty acids in, and also I rub it in his coat. If you melt that down your hands, rub it on their coat, that gives them a really fantastic coat shine. But yeah, really, raw isn't as scary as people believe. I think for a working lurcher, it's probably the best diet you can give them, because they're running so hard, they're burning so much energy. It gives them that energy, it keeps them a consistent weight. And I find when you do start working them, they really, really muscle up on a raw diet, on the protein. So yeah, the only thing I would say is if you're working your dog heavily in the winter, same as you would with dry food, you feed them a bit extra. I tend to feed my dog quite a bit more in the winter months, because as I say, he's just running 2-3 times a week, so he'll burn that off really quick. But yeah, like I said, this video I'm not really gonna go into the ins and outs and the science of raw feeding. It's not rocket science anyway. But yeah, I've got a lot of this venison to process. As you can see, like I've got like ribs and stuff like that, and leg bones, and yeah, I've got a lot of it. So this is all real good. It looks a bit messy. It is a bit messy, but when you think about the dog eating that compared to a dry biscuit, if I was a dog, I think I know what I'd rather eat. I'd rather be munching on that. So yeah, that's what I feed my dog for anyone who's interested. And yeah, I would recommend you all give it a go. If you've got the freezer space and you've got the time to process it, give it a go. It doesn't need to be expensive if you're out and about in the field anyway. You're getting the meat, I'm sure. So yeah, feed raw.